So my name is Thijs. It's a very, very Dutch name. So if you cannot pronounce it, don't worry. I listen to a wide variant of the variants of my name. We will start with some generic numbers about the total revenue of the e-commerce market in Europe, starting in 2018, all the way up to 2027. What is expected and projected, of course. So what we can see here is that 2018, we see like a strong growth all the way up to 2027, with a minor dip in 2022 due to like these macroeconomic circumstances, the war in Ukraine. But what also a big effect here is that you see like a big jump 2022 on 2019 and a big jump 2021 on 2020, which of course was a result of COVID, stores closing, stores opening again in the main markets as of Q4 21, Q1 22. And that's basically what you see here. And then later on in the year, of course, the war in Ukraine, rising energy prices. That are some circumstances that are not very beneficial for the European e-commerce market. If we look forward to next year, then we expect a growth again, and also all the way up to 2027, we see in the majority of the verticals that there's still a big transformation needed from physical retail to online retail. So if you're in the online business, these numbers look very promising. In which I made the top 6 of European plus UK, because of course UK is part of Europe, but not part of the EU. So you need some different requirements to enter the UK market. And that could be, of course, very interesting because it's still the biggest e-commerce market in Europe by far. On the second place, it's Germany, France, Spain, Italy, and the Netherlands coming sixth. If we look at other markets, Austria, the Nordics, Eastern Europe, they're way smaller. We expect a lot from Poland, but we expect that to be happening like in 1 or 2 years. We see that Amazon overall, if we look in Europe, is by far the biggest online retailer, followed by Otto. And actually, this is quite an interesting side because like up till 5 years ago, Otto had the stiff understanding that they could outgrow Amazon. But as you can see here, unfortunately for Otto, that did not happen. Then Zalando is following up. You see that Zalando is only a small portion of Amazon's total revenue. But as you all know, Amazon is a big generic marketplace selling a very wide range of articles. Zalando is very much focused on fashion. So if you're selling fashion, shoes, sportwear, accessories, everything within that corner, in big markets like Germany, the Netherlands, France, you are very much depending on Zalando next to Amazon. Then we have Apple, Tesco, VP, which is a marketplace, Carrefour, which is a marketplace, Ceconomy, which is the group focused on MediaMarkt, and then we see the Dutch local player called bol.com. So as you can see, Amazon is very dominant. For a successful marketplace, or let's say a successful online strategy within Europe, you cannot solely depend on Amazon. And that's something if you look at from all the generic numbers. So if you look at it from EU as a complete market, you are probably going to say, okay, focus on Amazon and that's it. But if you deep dive in every specific country, so the Netherlands being the 6th e-commerce market, it's a relatively small market, but you see that Amazon is only on the 6th spot. So if you want to dominate, if the Netherlands is important for you, start at bol.com. If fashion is important for you, start at Zalando and Otto in Germany. If we look at the French market is even more fragmented. And then if you go to the right, Spain, you see that Amazon is dominating there. And if you then see at the total number, still Amazon is the biggest marketplace. The orange lined online retailers, they are marketplaces. So as you can see here, marketplaces are like in many regions in the world dominating the online space. So now we're going to deep dive a bit into every individual market in Europe. And because like we only have like 10 minutes of presentation, we're not going through like all the 20 plus countries, but my main goal here today is to show you some insights in how different these individual European markets are. So the Netherlands is completely different than Germany, than the UK, Well, if you would go to Germany, you would not distinguish a Dutch guy from a German guy. You also are probably not going to hear the difference in language. But if you look at it from a cultural point of view, from an e-commerce point of view, the markets are completely different. So point one, the market is fragmented. Where you see that in Germany, Amazon is the biggest by far. So Germany is dominating more than half of all the product-related sales in Germany. In all the other countries, Amazon is a fraction of that, as we've seen in the previous slide. We see that cultural differences are extremely important. So 53% returns. That's the average return rate in Germany. If we look at the Dutch market, it's, for example, 10% points less. So Germans have a very, very a cultural understanding of returning items. And that's mainly because to conquer the German market, both Zalando and Amazon offered free returns from the start on. So Germans are very used to having free returns. Then if we look at the French market, we see that 22% of all French parcels are being shipped to a pickup point, which is the highest number of orders that are being shipped to pickup points in whole Europe. So if you want to have a successful strategy in France, then you are very reliant on pickup points. And there's a very good reason for that. Because in France, the majority of the cities is very small, and their house number logic is not always as straightforward as you would think in other countries. So people rely on pickup points to get their actual parcel delivered. And then if you look overall, then you see that the credit card is dominating the European market. But now, if you would look at my home market, which is the Netherlands, you see that 71% of the market share in the Netherlands, it's dominated by one single payment method that's available in no other country. And it's called Ideal. So what we see happening a lot of the times that foreign countries enter the European market, focus on the Netherlands in a later stadium, forget about Ideal because, of course, like credit card is the most dominant payment method, and then miss out on 71% of the Dutch market. So cultural differences within e-commerce matter. Languages. Well, a lot of the people, mainly in the Nordics, Germany, the Netherlands, speak English, German, French. The conversion of webshop is way lower if you don't offer the local language. So then if we look at this picture, this is from a lovely city in Belgium, one of the smaller European countries. And in these countries, they have in Belgium, they have 3 official languages, which is Flemish, which is very closely related to Dutch, which is French, and which is German. So if you open a web shop in Belgium, you're officially required to put a lot of the content in these 3 languages. So that's something that's good to keep in the back of your mind. In total, we have 24 official languages. And in general, we can say that without translating and also locating the site to the local language, you are probably not going to succeed in all the different local markets. We see that again, the European market is extremely fragmented. And so on the right, we see all logos from all the local carriers. And then the reaction that I get a lot of these times, like, okay, but then we just take DHL because DHL covers all Europe plus the UK. But we see that in specific markets, if you work with DHL in Italy, in Spain, in parts of Belgium, your successful delivery rate is low, the costs are high, and the number of days it takes to return a parcel is too high. So if you want to comply with the best in market KPIs, and if we look at marketplace specific, some marketplaces, they require specific carriers, you need to work with all the local carriers, from which DHL, bpost, PostNL, and Correos are the most important. But it's good to keep in mind that one single carrier will probably not help you out in the complete European market. And then the fifth part, which is also important because it can have serious consequences, And that's what we call like local legislation. So how it works in Europe is that the European Union defines European legislation. And then all the individual countries, they can basically do with it what they want, as long as it's in a specific border. On top of that, every individual country has the right to add, of course, local legislation. So what do we see is that in France and Germany, we see extended environmental legislation. So if you want to sell anything that's either packed in carton or is electronics or is fashion, then in both the France and Germany, you need to register with local companies that process these packages and returned items. If we then go to Belgium and France, they have very specific legislation, which is not valid for the Netherlands or Germany, or not applicable for the Netherlands or Germany, but only in Belgium and France. If you have a promotion outside of a specific period, and you would translate it to solden, which is basically the translation of sale, then you get a fine. Because in both the Belgium and French law, it states that the word sales, solden, is only allowed to be used in these two very specific periods. So that's something good to keep in mind. And then in Germany, the last example that we have is at one of the first companies I worked. We sold a lot of items to Germany. And what happens there, if you need to have an impressum, which is basically an additional document that's only required in Germany, which states your company details, the owner details, etc. If you do not comply with that local legislation, you will see that competitors, that's their strategy to go through your site, see if it's all compliant with all the legal requirements, and they will send you an Abmahnung, which means basically a warning. And if you then don't comply, you will get a final warning, which can have like very serious consequences, like that you are not allowed to sell in Germany anymore. And you have to start a new entity to start in Germany. So I think these are like very good things to keep in mind when you want to sell in specific countries. And that would also be my advice. Look at Europe, the opportunity from Europe as one whole, but look at all the individual markets to make sure that you succeed. To help you do that, we developed this strategic map. It all starts with strategy. And in Europe, we would say, okay, we're going to Europe. Which markets are we going to focus on? Then it's the integration part. It's the technical integration part, which you can do with companies like Channel Engine. It's the operational part, which we discussed, and with all the different carriers, the return solution. It's the content part in which you manage your content, localization, translation, and it's your advertising part. So every country requires their own advertising strategy, and every marketplace requires their own advertising execution. Of course, that has to be done by an organization. So every time you enter a European market, you keep those 6 blocks in mind. You will be sure you don't forget anything. You see how to work in Europe with agencies that can help you outsource this complete process. And I'm not going through all the individual lines today, but I think the most important thing here is that you basically see 2 models. One is managed and one is project. And a project, that's very useful if you have a start and an end date and you just want to get some work done. If you're not very familiar with the European market, then you can also choose for a more managed model, in which the agency manages your complete business, often performance-based. So if we look at my company, we are specialized in bringing brands to Europe. So everything that I told you about, translation, localization, legislation, logistics, returns, we are able to do that. And how we do it is we work in teams. So we have the Brandsom promise, which consists of a dedicated consultants, verticals, teams that work in verticals, so know your industry. Of course, we are a Channel Engine Gold partner, and we are a partner of Amazon, Bol.com, Zalando, and About You. So all the big marketplaces that are out there in Europe. We always scope. We do that with the 6 pillars we just mentioned. Then we go through an integration. go live, and business as usual. And this way you make sure basically that you always succeed in Europe, and you don't forget anything. Up to speed to market is really short, and we can really help you out. Just to keep in mind, when is Brandsom project or when is Brandsom managed a better fit? Go through these few requirements. If you have any doubt, just contact us, and we're more than happy to help you. Also, if you have any small questions about the European market, feel free to contact us.
Before we let you go, we do have a perfect question for you. You essentially are a layer over a lot of the things we're talking about here today, which is that you'll say, great, it's great to piece this all together, but you will take over the market entry and kind of management and growth for a brand in Europe. Is that accurate there?
That's the perfect description. So what? Yeah.
Okay, and so we have a company, for example, that's a baby chewable, what is it? Children's chewable vitamins that's asked a question, and that's a perfect example of a complicated scenario where there's probably regulatory issues and others. Do you help that whole range of issues?
Yeah. So how this would work is we will start with this brand readiness process, in which we, of course, not only evaluate the brand, but also the products and all individual legislation. And here, what's good to keep in mind already, like the first example, if you're going to sell food in Belgium, you need an additional registration. So these are things to think of, right? And this is what we can help you out with.
Yeah, so you'll take care of some of that and then also look at it. And then the other piece of the questions that I have are, and I don't know if you're the right exact person to answer these, but there are phases to getting your inventory in and selling and shipping and delivery fulfillment for Europe. And some companies say, well, I'm not ready yet to go full into Europe, place inventory, lock up inventory for the market, but I want to start dipping my toe in. Can I ship from the US into Europe? Is that something that you would deal with, those phases, and help? Is there a scenario? And also, where in Europe do I place my inventory? If I'm targeting Germany, do I put inventory in Germany? Do I stay in the Netherlands and deliver throughout the European region?
Yeah. And in general, we see that route, shipping directly from the US, is quite expensive and complicated due to customs, import duties, and shipment fees. It is possible for smaller items with a higher value. In all other situations, it's quite easy to start a European entity with a European VAT number. And from that moment, you are allowed to store inventory in, for example, the Netherlands. And then that offers some advantage. So you can ship directly from your factory, even if it's not in the US. You can ship it to Europe, which saves you like double shipping and double customs. Or otherwise, if you manufacture, of course, in the US, you can ship it directly. So from like a certain threshold, and for a lot of the product groups, to be honest, like we always recommend to have local inventory. The good news is once you have it in the EU, it moves freely over all the borders, except for the UK since they left the EU. So if you ship it to any country, you are allowed to freely ship it within any other EU country. And then basically it's a very practical decision. If you look at the European map, then you would also always want to have your inventory centralized, which basically means the Netherlands as a logistical country, or Germany or Poland. These are the three top logistical countries in Europe where you can store your inventory and ship from to all other European countries.
Awesome. Okay, thank you. Thijs again from Brandsom. Obviously, he's got a ton of knowledge around Europe market entry strategy, management, and growth. Get in touch with him if you want. His info is right there in the portal, and I'll put some of it in the chat. Thank you again, Thijs. Have a wonderful Ascension Day.
Thank you so much for the invite, and have a wonderful day as well.
See you soon.